practitioner does everything.
Chapter 2: A Cup of Tea. Seeing into one's own nature. In all Zen temples, there are fine portraits of Bodhidharma. The one in my monastery was a Chinese work in ink depicting an Indian monk with intense, vigorous features. His eyes and chin expressed a determined spirit. Bodhidharma lived, it is said, in the 5th century and is considered to be the first ancestral teacher of Zen Buddhism in China. It might be that many of the things reported about his life are not valid historically, but the personality and mind of this monk, as described through the tradition, have made him the ideal person for all who aspire to Zen enlightenment. His is the picture of someone who has attained perfect self-mastery, complete freedom, and tremendous spiritual power that allow him to regard happiness, unhappiness, and all vicissitudes of life with absolute calmness and clarity. The essence of his personality does not come from the position taken about the problem of absolute reality, nor from an indomitable will, but from a deep insight into his own mind and all living reality. The Zen phrase used is seeing into one's own nature. When one has reached this enlightenment, one sees all wrong view dissolve within oneself, a new vision that produces deep peace, great tranquility, and spirit strength. Characterized by the absence of fear is born. Seeing into one's own nature is the goal of Zen. Bodhidharma's statement. Seeing into one's own nature is not the fruit of study or research. It is a profound insight derived from living in the heart of reality, in perfect mindfulness. According to Bodhidharma, Zen is a special transmission outside the scriptures, not based on words or letters, a direct pointing to the heart of reality so that we might see into our own nature and wake up. In the 5th century, when Bodhidharma came to China, Chinese Buddhists were studying Buddhist texts and that had recently been translated. They were occupied more with systematizing the ideas and forming Buddhist sects than with practicing meditation. Bodhidharma's statement was like a thunder clap to wake them up and bring them to the practice and the experimental spirit of Buddhism. Because it is like a thunder, Bodhidharma's statement may seem extreme, but if we examine the relationship between Zen and Indian Buddhism, we see that Bodhidharma's pronouncement is very much in the same spirit as the teaching of Buddha. Bodhidharma said, Zen has been transmitted directly by the Buddha and has nothing at all to do with the scriptures and doctrines you are studying. At this first glance, it might seem that Zen is a kind of secret teaching transmitted from master to disciple, not passed on by writing or comment, a spiritual heritage that only initiates can understand. One could not even talk about teaching it, since Zen cannot be taught through symbols. It passes directly from master to student, from mind to mind. The image often used is a seal imprinted on the mind, not of gold, copper, or ivory, but a mind seal. The word tenth mission denotes the 10th mission of this mind seal. Zen itself is a mind seal. The enormous canon of Buddhist scriptures might be of Buddhism, but not Zen Buddhism. Zen is not found in the scriptures because Zen is not based on words or letters. This interpretation is often given to Bodhidharma's dictum by commentators. This misunderstanding occurs because these commentators overlook the intimate ties between Zen and early Buddhism. The frowning upon describing ultimate reality by words is common to all teaching of the Buddha. Bodhidharma's statement is very much in this tradition and merely a drastic way to bring people to a direct spiritual experience. The Buddhist Revolution. Buddhism was born toward the end of the 6th century BC. The word Buddhism comes from the Sanskrit verb Bud, which in the Vedic scriptures foremostly signifies to know, then to wake up. The one who knows, the one who wakes up, is called a Buddha. The Chinese has translated the word Buddha as an awakened person. Buddhism is therefore a doctrine of awakening, a doctrine of insight and understanding. But the Buddha made it known from the beginning that this awakening, this understanding, can only be acquired by the practice of the way and not by studies or speculation. Liberation in Buddhism comes about through understanding and not by grace or merit. The rise of Buddhism in India must be considered a new vision of humanity and life. This vision was expounded first as a reaction against the Brahmanic practice and beliefs that dominated the society of the time. What was in this society? From the intellectual standpoint, the authority of the Brahmanic tradition dominated all. The Vedic revelation, the divine supremacy of the Brahma, and the miraculous power of sacrifice were the three fundamentals one could not dispute. From the standpoint of belief, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva were the object of all the school. From the philosophy point of view, the thought of the Vedas and Upanishad were the basic of all philosophical concepts. Sankhya, Yoga, and the Sikh philosophical school were born and developed in this basis. Buddhism was thoroughly opposed to absolute Vedic authority and to all the point of view stemming from it. From the standpoint of belief, Buddhism rejected all deism, all form of sacrifice. From the social point of view, Buddhism combated the caste system, accepting untouchables in the order at the same level as a king. Buddha have met an untouchable who carried nice soil, brought him to the edge of the river to wash him, then accepted him into the Buddhist community despite the extreme protests of the others. From the intellectual standpoint, it rigorously rejected the notion of the self, Atman, which is the very heart of Brahmanism. One can see how Buddha reacted against the current of thought of his time by reading, for example, the Pramayala Sutta, which is found in the Dikha long discourses. His opposition to Brahmanic thought must be regarded primarily as a reaction, a revolt, rather than as an effort to present the Buddhist point of view. It doesn't mean that all the thoughts contained in the Vedas and Upanishads are erroneous or contrary to truth. This opposition is a clap of thunder aimed at giving a great shock in order to change the custom, manners, and models of thought that had brought society to an impasse. Because Brahmanism considers the concept of Atman, self, as a basis for its methodology and its ontology, Buddha posited the doctrine of the Anatman, not self. What did he mean? The self of which you speak, whether it is the great self or the small self, is only a concept that does not correspond to any reality. If we think in ontological terms, we might say the doctrine of not-self was considered by the Buddha as the truth opposing the doctrine of self, but this is not correct. If we think in methodological terms, we see immediately that the notion of not-self is an antidote aimed at liberating us from the prison of dogma. Before examining the question of truth or falsehood, it is necessary to examine the attitudes and method. This allows us to say that the notion of not-self was born in reaction to the Brahmanic notion of the self and not as a discovery independent of the thought of the time. It was a simple reaction that later served as the point of departure for a new understanding. Not self. Drastic methods are frequently used in Buddhism to uproot habit or prejudices. This characteristic trait of Buddhism is manifested most energetically in Zen. The Buddha used the notion of the not-self to upset and to destroy. Later, he used it to expound his teaching of awakening. It can thus be said that the notion of not-self is the point of departure of Buddhism. Buddhist scriptures often speak of the not-self nature of all phenomena. Things do not possess a self. Sava Dhammas Naratmiya. Nothing in itself contains an absolute identity. This means the rejection of the principle of identity, which is the basis of formal logic. According to this principle, A must be A, B must be B, and A cannot be B. The doctrine of not-self says A is not A, B is not B, and A can be B. This is something that shocks people and invites them to re-examine themselves. In order to understand not-self, the concept of impermanence, anicca, in Buddhism must also be considered. All is impermanent. Everything is in the state of perpetual change. Nothing remains the same for 2 consecutive koans, the shortest imaginable periods of time. It is because things transform themselves ceaselessly that they cannot maintain their identity even during 2 consecutive koans. Not being able to fix their identity, they are not self, that is to say, devoid of absolute identity. Not having a fixed identity, A is no longer the A of the preceding koan. This is why one says that A is not A. Impermanence is another name for not-self. In time, things are impermanent. In space, they are devoid of a fixed identity. Not only are physical phenomena impermanent and without a separate self, but the same is true of physiological phenomena. For example, our body, mental phenomena, and feelings. Many people think that Anatman and Anicca are the basis for the pessimistic moral doctrine. They say, if all things are impermanent and devoid of a fixed identity, why bother to struggle so hard to obtain them? This is a misunderstanding of the Buddha's teaching. Buddhism aims at liberation through understanding. It is therefore necessary to examine the teaching of the Buddha from the point of view of understanding and not to take his word too literally without understanding their meaning. Impermanence and not-self are important principles that lead to deep understanding. Things and concepts. The principle of not-self brings to light the gap between things themselves and the concept we have of them. Things are dynamic and alive, while our concepts are static. Look, for example, at a table. We have the impression that the table itself and our concept of it are identical. In reality, what we believe to be a table is only our concept. The table itself is quite different from notions good, brown, hard, 3 feet high, old, etc. give rise to a concept of table in us. The table itself is always more than that. For example, a nuclear physicist will tell us that the table is a multitude of atoms whose electrons are moving like a swarm of bees, and that if we could put these atoms next to each other, the mass of matter could be smaller than 1 finger. This table, in reality, is always in transformation. In time as well as in space, it is made only of non-table elements. It depends on these elements so much that if we were to remove them from the table, there could be nothing left. The forest, the tree, the saw, the hammer, and the cabinet maker are non-table elements, as are the parents of the cabinet maker, the bread that they eat, the blacksmith who makes the hammer, and so on. If we know how to look deeply at the table, we can see the presence of all these non-table elements in it. The existence of the table demonstrates the existence of all non-table elements, in fact, of the entire universe. This idea is expressed in the Avatamsaka system of Buddhism by the notion of interbeing. The interbeing of things. Genesis in Buddhism is called interbeing. The birth, growth, and decline of things depend upon multiple causes and conditions, and not just a single one. The presence of one thing, Dharma, implies that the presence of all other things. The enlightenment man and woman see each thing not as a separate entity, but as a complete manifestation of reality. The 12th century Vietnamese monk Thich Hanh said, "If one thing exists, everything exists, even a speck of dust. If one thing is empty, everything is empty, even the whole universe." The doctrine of not-self aims at bringing to light the interbeing nature of things, and at the same time demonstrate to us that the concept we have of things do not reflect or cannot convey reality. The world of concept is not the world of reality. Conceptual knowledge is not the perfect instrument for studying truth. Words are inadequate to express the truth of ultimate reality. The vanity of the metaphysics. These preliminary remarks are the point of departure of Zen Buddhism. If concepts do not represent reality, then conceptual knowledge of reality can be considered erroneous. That is demonstrated many times in Buddhism. The Buddha always told his disciples not to waste their time and energy in metaphysical speculation. Whenever he was asked a metaphysical question, he remained silent. Instead, he directed his principles toward practical effort. Questioned one day about the problem of the infinity of the world, the Buddha said, "Whether the world is finite or infinite, limited or unlimited, the problem of your liberation remains the same." Another time he said, "Suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow and the doctor wishes to take out the arrow immediately. Suppose the man does not want the arrow removed until he knows who shot it, his age, his parents, and why he shot it. What good happened? If he were to wait until all these questions have been answered, the man might die first. Life is so short, it must not be spent in endless metaphysical speculation that does not bring us any closer to the truth." But if conceptual knowledge is fallible, what other instruments should we use to grasp reality? According to Buddhism, we only reach reality through direct experience. Study and speculation are based on concepts. In conceptualizing, we cut reality into small pieces that seem to be independent of one another. This manner of conceiving things is called imaginative and discriminative knowledge, vikalpa, according to the Vietnamese school of Buddhism. The faculty that directly experiences reality without passing through concepts is called non-discriminative and non-imaginative wisdom, nivakapayana. This wisdom is the fruit of meditation. It is a direct and perfect knowledge of reality, a form of understanding in which one does not distinguish between subject and object. It cannot be conceived by the intellect nor expressed by language. Experience itself. Suppose I invite you to join me a cup of tea. You receive your cup, taste the tea, and then drink a little more. You seem to be enjoying it. Then you put your cup on the table and we have a conversation. Now, suppose I ask you to describe the tea. You use your memory, your concepts, and your vocabulary to describe the sensations. You may say, it is very good tea, the best tea koans tea, manufactured in Taipei. I can still taste it in my mouth. It is very refreshing. You could express your sensation in many other ways, but these concepts and these words describe your direct experience of the tea. They are not the experience itself. Indeed, in the direct experience of the tea, you do not make the distinction that you are the subject of the experience and that the tea is its object. You do not think that the tea is the best or the worst of the tea kuan yin of Taipei. There is no concept or word that can frame this pure sensation resulting from experience. You can offer as many descriptions as you like, but only you have had a direct experience of the tea. When someone listens to you, she can recreate for herself certain sensation based on experience that she might have had, but that is all. And you yourself, when you describing the experience, are already no longer in it. In the experience, you were one with the tea. There was no distinction between subject and object, no evaluation, and no discrimination. That pure sensation is an example of non-discriminative wisdom, which introduces us to the heart of reality. The moment of awakening. To reach truth is not to accumulate knowledge, but to awaken to the heart of reality. Reality reveals itself complete and whole at the moment of awakening. In the light of awakening, nothing is added and nothing is lost. Emotions based on concept no longer affect us. If Bodhidharma is an ideal person, it is because he has broken the chain of illusion that binds us to the world of concept. The hammer used to break this chain is the practice of Zen. The moment of awakening may be marked by an outburst of laughter, but this is not the laughter of someone who has won a lottery or some kind of victory. It is the laughter of one who, after searching for something for a long time, suddenly finds it in the pocket of his coat. One day, the Buddha was standing in front of the assembly of Wuta Peak. Everyone was waiting for him to begin his Dharma talk, but he remained silent. After a long time, he held up a flower, still not uttering a single word. Everyone in the assembly looked at him, but they did not understand at all. Then one monk looked at the Buddha with sparkling eyes and smiled. The Buddha said, I have the treasure of the vision of the perfect Dharma, the marvelous spirit of Nirvana, the reality without impurity, and I have transmitted them to Mahakassapa. The monk whose smile was indeed Mahakassapa, one of the great disciples of the Buddha. Mahakassapa reached the moment of awakening when Buddha raised his flower. He truly saw the flower, and he received the mind seal of the Buddha. To use the Zen terminology, Buddha has transmitted his deep understanding from mind to mind. He had taken the seal of his mind and imprinted it on the mind of Mahakassapa. The smile of Mahakassapa was not a great outburst, but it was of the exact same nature and quality as the outburst of laughter of the great Zen master. Mahakassapa arrived at the awakening thanks to the flower and to his deep looking. Some Zen masters have attained awakening through a shout, a cry, or even a cake.